I went into Ballerina expecting a simple spin-off, something decent, maybe even forgettable. But what I got instead is a stylish, brutal sequel that genuinely surprised me at some points. It's not perfect, but it hits harder than you'd expect. Today, we're talking about Ballerina, the unexpected John Wick spin-off directed by Lynn Wiseman, hopefully I'm saying that right, and starring Ana de Armas. Quick heads up, this video will include spoilers. That said, let's break down what worked, what didn't, and whether Ballerina earns its place in the John Wick universe or not. On the surface, Ballerina is a revenge story. Eve's father was murdered, and she's on a mission to find the people responsible. But halfway through, the movie drops a twist, and it turns out her sister, who she thought was dead, is actually alive, and working with the people who killed her father. But on the other side of things, she didn't actually know her sister was alive. And right after, and I mean literally minutes after they reconnect, the sister just gets killed off. It could have been the emotional center of the whole movie, but instead of giving the relationship time to breathe, the movie brushes past it with no fallout, no reflection. It's like the sister barely mattered beyond the twist. And tonally, the movie sticks with the John Wick formula: grounded fantasy, tight action choreography, and a world where consequences come fast. The pacing is pretty fast too, and this film definitely leans into the classic John Wick style. But let's start with the positives, and honestly, there are quite a few. Ana de Armas as Eve is totally convincing. She absolutely kills it in the action scenes, and you believe her as someone who could go toe-to-toe with Wick. Well, at least a little, for a little while, and I'd genuinely love to see her return in another movie, but the movie would have to have more of a fleshed out story. And my boy John Wick, he was way more involved than I expected. This wasn't some 30-second cameo like I thought it would be. He actually has scenes, a tiny character arc, and even a full-on fight with Eve, and I think it's good that they didn't just do some cheap fan service. One thing I thought was pretty interesting was Norman Reedus' role in this movie, in the sense of he's kind of a sleeper in this movie. Not a ton of screen time, but you can feel there's more story to tell with this character, and I wouldn't be surprised if he's being set up for a future spinoff. And the action sequences, look, it's a John Wick spinoff. You know the action is going to be slick, brutal, and borderline amazing. The grenade choreography was a highlight, even if some of them didn't go off like they should have. Like, she definitely should have blown her face off a couple times, but the movie makes up for it. And it's still creative, flashy, and fun. And the John Wick and Eve fight deserves its own shout out. It's tense, grounded, and says a lot without spelling it out with exposition. You could tell John Wick is holding out, not because Eve isn't strong, but because he respects her. And if he hadn't held back, let's just say the movie would have been very short. The main villain. Honestly, he was kind of a letdown. He's marketed as the leader and the big bad, but he doesn't really do much. He has no real standout moments and no feeling of like being a menace. And when he does win, it feels more like dumb luck than something he actually earned. All in all, that was my biggest letdown with this movie. And I know we already glossed over this, but the sister plot falls flat. The twist that her sister's alive should have reshaped the movie emotionally. Instead, the reunion is very short-lived, and once the sister dies, it's barely acknowledged. It has no lasting impact, no emotional follow-through. It makes what could have been the movie's beating heart feel like an afterthought. Sounds cliche, but yeah. Okay, this is what I like to call enemy AI syndrome. A lot of the henchmen basically walk into Eve's attacks, even when they've got longer ranged or better weapons. They could easily just shoot her from a distance, but no. Let's walk up into her fist fighting range so she can kick my ass. But all jokes aside, the choreography is great, and the choreography does live up to the John Wick name. But speaking of the John Wick name and the other movies, this movie is probably the weakest movie in the John Wick franchise so far, but that doesn't mean it's bad. It's just a really high bar to meet. But even with its flaws, Ballerina works because it understands what makes this universe tick. Wick. See what I did there? It respects John Wick as a character without diminishing him. It builds a new protagonist who could lead future movies, and most importantly, it feels like part of the same world, just from a new angle, which was actually very impressive that they could do that. Although the emotional depth isn't as strong as it could have been, the style and choreography and world building keep it engaging, so it still works out. But is Ballerina perfect? No, but it doesn't need to be. It's a fun, flashy side story in a franchise that's made a name for itself by redefining modern action. Ana de Armas holds her own, Keanu is still magnetic, and there's just enough world building and lore to justify the watch. Just don't expect it to be John Wick 5. This is more of a John Wick detour, with a few emotional beats that didn't fully land, but they remind you that expanding the John Wick universe was worth it. And thank you for joining me in today's movie review. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to subscribe and feel free to check out my previous videos. I put a lot of work into these videos and I try to improve on each one, so if you can, check it out. It tells the algorithm that my videos are worth watching, and as always, stay curious and let's keep the conversation going.